The presentation that I have here is the State of the Alliance. So I thought I would take a step back and do a little bit of how did I get here? I ask myself that question almost after every conference call I'm in. How did I get here? Which makes me think of the Talking Heads song. And the next line is something like, my God, what have I done? It's not that bad, but this is a big effort. And how did I get here? So how did I get here in HPC and involved with OpenFabrics? I thought I'd give you a little background there. So I work at Los Alamos National Laboratory. I've worked there since 1992. And in 2005 was when I started working in high performance computing. And I didn't know anything about HPC at that time. So I started in 2005, and then in 2010, the HPC division at Los Alamos actually created a network team. We had never had a network team before then. And I applied to be on that team, and that's how I got into the interconnect. We had Marinet at the time, and then InfiniBand was just starting, or at least at Los Alamos, we were just deploying that. I've always been on the deployment side of things, not the developer side. So that's another thing to understand as far as where my perspectives come from. I mean, I know how to write code. I can do a patch now and then, but I have no delusions of grandeur that I'm not a developer. So that's where my perspective comes from, is actually deploying these things at large scale and seeing how they work. The other thing to mention is, okay, so when I started coming to these about maybe 6 years ago, these conferences, it was the only conference I could find that focused on OpenFabrics and InfiniBand. So I would attend them, even though they were very developer focused, and I would get lost because there's a lot in the OpenFabrics code base. And so for about 3 or 4 years, I spearheaded the idea of a users group conference or workshop. And we held 3 or 4 of those. And I think they were fairly successful, if for no other reason than we created a little bit of a community, and we knew then people at other organizations who were dealing with the same kinds of deployment issues that we were. And we had a lot of, one of the more long-running things that came out of that was we had a group of folks that talked about the different monitoring tools that different people have developed, because that's always been the biggest issue people have complained about. It's hard to monitor. We don't have the same tools you have for Ethernet. So everybody kind of wrote their own, and there's some really good tools out there, and some really good building blocks for those tools that come with the OpenFabrics suite. So, so that's kind of where I came from. As far as getting onto the board of directors, when I started kind of getting involved in the OpenFabrics Alliance, Los Alamos had actually let their membership drop. For those of you that don't know a lot about the OFA, it's membership driven, so you pay a fee for a certain membership level, and then the board of directors is made up of the highest level of those supporters, which is called promoters. And LANL had let their membership drop, and I felt like it was important, so we re-upped our membership, and I started calling in to some of the conference calls to find out, what this larger organization was about. So last May or so, when Jim Ryan got the opportunity to retire, it was a short time frame. He had to decide and then announce and then be gone inside of like 6 or 8 weeks or something. And there's always been, or there has been recently, an effort to try and get the Alliance run more from a user perspective instead of a vendor perspective. So I was asked to put my name in the hat for being chair of the board, and I got elected, so here I am. So that's how I got here. So again, what is the OFA? To kind of go over it a little bit. So the OFA has been around since 2005, is when it was incorporated. It's actually incorporated in the state of California, and it has a set of bylaws by which members, when you become a member of the Alliance, you agree to abide by these bylaws. And there's lots of stuff in there. I have a slide later on about the bylaws and some of the things we're trying to change in there, because again, this ongoing theme, the landscape has changed. So those bylaws really need some serious, take a serious look at them. But the OFA has various working groups. There's the Enterprise Working Group, which basically puts together the OFED distribution. OFIWIG, which is the interface working group, OpenFabrics Interface working group. That's the libfabric adventure. There's also the verbs working group, which specifically looks at the various verbs issues and extensions and changes there. So those are more the software-driven pieces of the OFA. We also have a really important program called the Interop, where there's interoperability testing that's done currently mostly on the hardware. So different hardware vendors will bring their hardware to this Interop event to make sure that it will interoperate with the software and all those things. There's some big changes possibly in that area that I'm going to talk about in a minute as well. Training programs. The marketing program can't be understated. Bill Lee and the Nereus folks, because of them, we're here at this workshop. So they do a lot of other things as well, but they manage and plan and do all the logistics to make this workshop happen every year. And that's really huge. And then, of course, just the day-to-day, paying the bills and getting the membership agreements signed and all that sort of thing. But what I want to focus on is the OFA's mission, when they got started way back when, was there were a group of, a lot of the DOE laboratories were involved, as well as some for-profit organizations, companies. And everybody knew that there was a need for high bandwidth, low latency, interconnect fabric for HPC that would do better than Ethernet. And there were some different different efforts going on, and the idea was to get all these people together, come up with some standards and a technology and a software stack that could facilitate that thing. And that has been very successful. So a lot of the people in the room here have been with this project almost from its inception, if not from its inception. I have not been. I'm relatively new to this. But one of the goals was to get this technology stabilized and out in the community in such a way that people expected it, that it became a known entity. And I think back then it was probably a little bit of a pipe dream, but to get it in the distros, get it in the kernel, get it accepted. And that has in fact happened. So that's why this slide has the big check mark. We really have succeeded in doing that. The technology is well adopted. The community is quite large. A lot of companies, other than people who are members of the OFA, contribute to the code base. It's fully open source. So it's been really successful. So it is possible that the OFA has done its job and it can just close the doors and go home. I personally think that the OFA can continue to contribute to the environment and to the community. And so that is the ongoing conversation that I'd like to have with people this week. And just to tee it up for Thursday afternoon, there's a town hall where we want to have this open conversation. What does the OFA mean to you? Does it mean anything to you? What can we do? What are we doing that helps? What could we be doing that we're not doing? And what does the OFA look like going forward? So as kind of a lead into that, I'd like to go through a little bit of the recent work that we've done since last year's conference. And again, I just want to bring up this year's conference. It takes a lot of work to put this conference on. It takes a lot of logistics and planning. It also takes, we started last September or October, I think, with the technical program committee, getting the sessions, getting the advertisement for the sessions, getting EasyChair up, advertising the sessions. It takes a lot of work. So one of the things that we've accomplished is that we're all here in this room together having these conversations. Another thing that we've done, and again, all of this has been with an eye towards being more transparent, being more open, being more acknowledging of the wider community that's out there beyond the actual members in the OFA. So one of the things we did to try and be more transparent and open and inclusive was to put our calendar online. So all of the working groups are open to anybody who wants to call in. They're not restricted to members only. So on this, I wonder if this little thing works. Not very well, but on this calendar, if you go to a meeting that's open to anybody and you click on it, it gives you the call-in information so that you can just call in and participate at any time. There are a few meetings that are closed, like the board meeting currently is not open to everybody. But if you click on those, you will get information about how to get involved. So if you really want to be involved, there's, I think, an email address or something where you can say, hey, I would really like to participate in this meeting. Why is it closed, or what can I do? So the calendar was kind of a first step towards let's advertise when we're meeting, what we're talking about, and invite other people to participate. The other recent thing we did was several years ago, there was some training that was developed. Paul Gruen was instrumental in that, along with UNH. Dr. Russell, I don't think he's here today. There was a training program that got developed. It's about a 2 or 3 day class. I took it several years ago. And it's basically fundamental verbs programming. So it's an introduction to the RDMA API. It's a pretty good class. And that was offered by UNH IOL as a for-profit, a for-fee sort of training. And what we've done is we've recovered all of that training material, and we have put it out on our website for free. So the OpenFabrics Alliance has their own, openfabrics.org, and there's a page on there that you can go and download this training. There's code examples, there's laboratory work, things to work through. There's a presentation information. The whole thing is out there for you to download for free. So anybody can do this. You can do it. You can download it to present in-house. But we're also allowing people to download it, and if they want to turn around and offer this as a training class for a fee, we're fine with that. Because really it just markets what we are and who we are and how to interact with us. So I think that's also a positive thing. There's a couple of people here. I think System Fabric Works and UNH may be thinking about offering a class for a fee, and they may come up like at a break or something and maybe give some details. But as I said, it's there for anybody to download for free or to offer to design a class and then offer it for a fee. Another thing that we had to work through, which was really, really painful, is this dual license issue. So I mentioned the bylaws earlier. When you become a member of the OFA, you agree to abide by these bylaws, and one of the bylaws rules was if you contribute code to this code base, you must contribute it under a dual license, GPL and BSD. And that's been there from the beginning. And so basically, the code has been dual licensed for many, many years. And what that allows people to do is to take the code and either translate it to another operating system or add value to it and then turn around and sell it as a proprietary thing. And so the member companies have been able to take advantage of that. What we've discovered is as the community's gotten bigger and the code base has gotten bigger, we've had people contribute value add patches. We've had some patches come in that are GPL only. And so that broke the dual license nature of things. And it took a really long time with a lot of conversations to find out. We think we have pretty much nailed down where are those GPL only type files, what does it affect? And so at this time what we believe is that those GPL only files are in the kernel or in the compat pieces. User space is still completely dual licensed. We don't know if that helps or not. So like I said, we have some member companies who kind of depend on this dual license nature, and we've spoken with them about it. All we can do is give them the information at this point. We can't really ask them, it's not appropriate for us to say, so how does this really affect you? Because, that's their proprietary business. But so the issue is not completely resolved because I believe there probably are some companies out there that are going to have to struggle with how to deal with this. We looked at a couple other options. We looked at clean rooming the patches that came in as GPL, but that seemed to be kind of a non-starter. As the landscape is changing and the community's growing and people are out there contributing to the code base, and they feel very strongly about GPL. They think You know, if I'm out here contributing my time and effort to an open source project, it needs to be open source, and so I'm going to make it GPL, end of story. So if we want to include that larger community that feels that way, it doesn't make any sense to maybe hire somebody to just clean room every patch that comes in. So as I said, that turned out to be kind of a non-starter. So I believe that the lay of the land going forward is that the kernel has GPL pieces in it. The other important aspect to this was there was a recent release of OFED. And OFED really comes out of the OFA directly. And so we needed to provide some guidance to the folks that develop and distribute OFED so that they would know what to tell the people who were using it. And so we came up with a statement that's in the license, in a license text file that goes out with the OFED tarball that basically says that the kernel is now GPL because of these pieces that are in there, but that the user space is still dual licensed and it is not tainted by the fact that it just happens to be in the same tarball. So again, this was a very long and painful, drawn out, several conversations with lawyers, with developers, with the board to decide what to do about it. And as I said, ultimately, it's the reality that we face, and I don't think we can go back. We can't put the genie back in the bottle, at least on the kernel space. We believe that user space will stay dual license going forward. The RDMA core repo that is now out on GitHub, I think there's a presentation about it later in the week. The maintainers of that have agreed to continue to enforce dual license at the user space level. We'll see how that goes, but so for now, that's what we believe the landscape is going forward. The other thing that we've talked about doing is, again, as things are changing, what should the OFA be doing? And one of the things we've been asked to do, actually, and we're trying to figure out how to do it, is to provide maintainer support. So should we hire a maintainer? Should we pay a salary for someone to be a maintainer? At this point, what we've decided to do, because we're in this transition, and we need everybody in the room here, plus other people, to help us know where to go with this. But at this point, we're talking about the OFA basically providing maintainer support in the sense that we will, you know, as driven by need, so I've talked to Doug Ledford about this, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, provide a place for a face-to-face meeting for the core developers who are active in the development and are submitting patches, and you know, as issues and architecture questions arise, it helps for everybody to be in the same room. The Linux RDMA mailing list is great and it's doing a great job, but getting together in the same room, you know, you really can't beat that. So the OFA is willing to host those types of meetings. At this time, we're saying it would probably be invitation only, not because we're trying to be exclusive, but you know, we want the right people in the room. So we would probably, you know, communicate with Doug Ledford and others in the community to see, you know, who should be in this meeting, how many people is it, and then we can host those meetings and try to help basically provide support to the maintainers, because it's a big job. It's a big job to do that work. The other really cool thing, I think it's really cool, that is happening is the Interop work, which up until now has been very hardware driven. We have 2 distros that are interested in doing software testing. So the Interop is a program that the OFA and UNH-IOL, we have a statement of work with them, and they do this work for us. We are working with UNH-IOL and with Red Hat and with SUSE to look at having software interoperability testing being done. And I think that could be really huge. So right now, we're at the stage where SUSE and Red Hat are reviewing what we currently have as the test plan that UNH-IOL uses. Doug's been kind of going through it with a fine-tooth comb to see what are we testing, what should we be testing that we're not. It kind of goes back to that software compliance test that somebody mentioned earlier in the morning. If we can make sure that we're testing the functionality, and that the functionality that people are saying, well, you know, our stuff can do this kind of thing now, we need to test that. We need to test the capabilities. So if we can enhance that interop testing, I think that benefits the entire community. And part of what we're trying to do to make that easier is to kind of bring the UNH IOL interop testing into the 21st century and use some of the CI tools and the testing tools that at least SUSE and Red Hat are using now, and lots of other people use them too. The ones we're focusing on right now are Jenkins, Beaker, and OpenQA. Those are the ones used by Red Hat and SUSE. So if we can get those test frameworks in place at UNH IOL, then if and when, and hopefully when, SUSE and Red Hat start doing testing there, then the interface between UNH IOL and those distros will be easier because we will be able to talk to them using the tools that they use in-house to do their various testing. So that's really huge. It's underway right now. UNH IOL is currently trying to deploy some of these test frameworks so that they know how to use them when the time comes. So the other thing, the bylaws update. So maybe the woman with the hair pulling should have been on the bylaws update. But the bylaws are pretty dense. There's lots of stuff in there. They were written at a time when, it was a very egalitarian situation. It was a new thing. We just want to get together and create this technology and market it and get it out there, push it upstream. But things have changed. So we're trying to formalize some things. One thing that we're all very thankful that Jim Ryan was leading this thing for so many years because it takes a lot of effort. And I don't think anybody knew how much effort until he stepped aside. And I certainly couldn't do this myself without Jim and Paul and Bill helping because there's a lot going on. But we have never formalized the officer positions. So that's one thing we're doing is if there's a chair, then there should be a term. You're chair for a year, maybe 2, and then it should be someone else. So to keep new people and fresh ideas coming in, and maybe there's no term limits. Maybe the same person wants to do it for another 10 years. It wouldn't be me. But we want to formalize that. The dual license stuff, that's in our bylaws. We're going to have to address how that gets handled in the bylaws because at this point, we're actually in violation of our bylaws. So that needs to change. There's language in the bylaws that talks about ownership of the software, and we don't own it. We just need to accept that and move on. So the big thing is the mission going forward. What is the OFA's mission going forward? We've had a huge success. We've done what we set out to do. But again, as I said, I don't believe that the OFA's value is now 0. The OFA, as I said, does this conference. They do the interop testing. We now have training. There are other things we can do probably. Again, the town hall will all have a chance to talk about this. If the majority of the people in the room thinks that the OFA should just die a slow death, or a quick death, maybe we don't have a purpose. There are other efforts out there, quite frankly, that are parallel efforts to what we're doing. Are those efforts sufficient? And are we just duplicating things and muddying the waters? I think that's a fair thing. That's a fair question to ask. And we all need to be honest about what the answers are. So given what comes out of these conversations, that will drive what our bylaws look like if we continue. What's our purpose and all those things, right? So along those lines, the most important thing that I wanted to talk about is the biggest piece of trying to be more transparent is that we want to bring in 2 more board of director seats. Right now, if you're a promoter member, and that's $10,000 a year, there's 15 of us, I believe, a bunch of DOE laboratories and some various companies. You get to have a seat on the board and your organization can pick who's on the board. But we understand that, as I said many times now, you'll hear it many times more probably, the community's bigger now. And we need to listen to that larger community. And most of the people on the board right now are more manager types. And managers are important, right? They do work that most of us don't want to do. But it needs to be driven more by the grassroots. So there are 2 seats that we are going to open up for anybody in the community, and it would be for a 1-year term. And so anybody can nominate, you can nominate yourself, you can nominate anybody else. And the way this is going to be formalized is at the annual general meeting, which is the annual meeting we have to have. We're a 501c6, the OFA is. And there are, in our bylaws, we have to have an annual meeting. So at the annual meeting, we will take nominations from the floor. If someone's nominated who's not in the room, we're going to ask that somehow we get a phone call, an email, that says, yes, I'm willing to play the game if I get elected. So we don't want to elect somebody who says, are you kidding me? I'm not going to do that. So that's where we're going to take nominations. And then starting after that general meeting and through the end of the conference is when everybody gets to vote. So everybody who's registered at the conference will get 2 votes, one for, for those 2 seats. And by doing that, we're hoping to bring in a wider perspective, a more grassroots perspective to help the OFA understand what its value is going forward. So that kind of tees up the town hall on Thursday. And I have no idea how I'm doing on time. Okay, so the one last slide here. So the allegory that we've kind of been using is, the OFA started when OpenFabrics was an infant. It needed care and feeding. It needed an environment in which to grow. It needed a lot of facilitation. The kid's grown up now and it's got the keys to the car and it's driving down the street. So the OFA can't go running after it and pretend that it's still in control because it's not. But I do think it still has a parental or a guidance sort of ability to help continue to foster that community. In fact, somebody said not only do they have the keys to the car, they have the title. So it's true. I mean, we're an open source community and we need to embrace that and understand where we're at and act in accordance with that. So that's basically my presentation on the state of the Alliance, where we're at. I'm asking you to think about, look around and see who you think might be a good person to help the OFA move forward. There is one restriction that we did decide to put in place. So you can't nominate someone who is already affiliated with an organization who has a seat on the board. So if you're an Intel employee, too bad. If you're a Mellanox employee, too bad. If you're another Los Alamos, sorry, Jesse, you won't be able to do it. So if you're already affiliated with an organization that's on the board, then you're not eligible for these at-large seats. But that's kind of on purpose because we're trying to reach out. We're trying to reach out to the broader community. So I believe that's all I have. As I like to say, I'm currently sitting in the chair. Not going to be here forever. But I would like to ensure that the OFA, if it continues in an intelligent way, right? So we don't want to just be sitting up in some ivory tower talking to each other thinking we have some control when we really don't. We want to be part of the bigger community and help foster that bigger community. So that's what I got. Any questions?
Do we have some more specific information in some detail about which files in the kernel part are now GPL only? From
yes.
which revisions on? And
well, okay, there's 2 answers to that question. We think there may have been GPL code in historically speaking, and we don't know exactly when it's snuck in, is kind of what I've heard. With respect to OFED, the recent release, we know exactly which files those are. And I believe that they are even, I'm looking at Woody, I believe they may even be listed in a file that's in OFED. I'm not sure, I know I have a list of them. Okay. You might need to go to the mic just so it's on the, thank you.
So in OFED, the current release one, like OFED 318-3, I believe that the GPL files that are in there are the ICER target code and some of the backport code that's only used if you're going to compile it for a specific Linux kernel, which people that want dual license code really wouldn't care about that anyway. So I think in the previous versions, it's mostly still all clean or dual licensed. In OFED 4.8, which is based, on the 4.8 kernel, there's a few files in the IB core that were contributed by Christoph Helwick that are GPL only, which now when you compile that core, the entire core piece gets tainted with the GPL. In addition to the ISR target code, which is GPL only. And then there was some code that wasn't really developed as part of the OFA, but is tangential. It's the NVMe over Fabrics driver, and it was developed by the NVM Express Consortium that's been working on NVM Express PCI drives for years, and they had a driver that they did years ago for that, and that was a GPL-only driver, and when they added the RDMA module to that, well, they couldn't change the license, and so they just left that GPL as well. And in the discussions in the EWG, people are interested in trying that driver out, and so we're putting it into OFED 4.8. And then there was some additional code related to a product that Intel has that's an iWARP product that's in some of our newer platforms, the i40 driver, which was upstreamed last year. And the RDMA part of that driver was upstreamed as dual license code. However, it needs to use the standard Ethernet driver that's in the network part of the network stack, okay? And that driver has been the same driver that Intel's been releasing for years and years under GPL only. But to use that in the OFED package, they need to be in there together so that the Ethernet part is GPL only. So as she said, there's more, the community is bigger now than the OpenFabrics. It's the general RDMA and Linux subsystem people, right? And so, you can't really just say, okay, we're only going to, package up this thing that was only the code contributed by OFA members, because if you get to a point, and we're at that point now, where you can't really package anything that's useful, especially when we've, now tainted the core.
Right. It won't function if you do that.
Yeah, it's been tainted for a long time.
No, always. We've always used kernel GPL only services.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean, let's not get into the actual
Yeah, believe me,
lawyerness
this is a
of this.
very sticky
We have
subject.
back and forth discussions with lawyers about, you take an individual file by itself, the header file says dual license, that file in and by itself, just because it's in Linus's tree doesn't make it GPL, but you can have your discussions with your lawyers as well. And if you get two lawyers in the same room, they will give you a different answer.
I think that's what I came up to say here is,
Okay.
Susan, just to clarify, the OpenFabrics Alliance is not giving legal advice on the state of licensing by
Correct.
doing any of this.
Correct.
And that anyone who wishes to use the code in a non-Linux context is advised to consult their own lawyers and come to their own conclusion, and we are not responsible.
That is a very valid statement,
Giving
yes.
our best guidance.
Yeah.
All right,
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember the actual sentence or two that's in the OFED tarball, but it's very simple, and there are a few files here, use at your own discretion kind of thing.
Right,
So yes,
we're just
Jason's
interested
very
in
accurate.
having the list, okay?
Yes.
So,
And maybe that's something we should do with OFED moving forward, is actually put the list in there of, within this tarball, these are the files that are GPL only. That might be helpful.
Right.
Well, it would just be, you could just put a text file.
No, I'm saying that you have to go through every single file.
Well, that's true.
And look through the code.
Yes.
And, do I know for sure that even though the header file says it's the dual license, that somebody
Whatever you have, Woody, I'd be glad to see it. For those at-large directors, people will nominate whoever. At some point, I guess we'll have a list that we could look at and figure out who's running or something
Yes.
like that?
The way we're going to do it is at the end of the annual general meeting, which is tomorrow afternoon, correct? That's where we'll take the nominations. So once
Okay.
that meeting is over, we'll know the list of names.
Okay, you'll have
Now,
your list, okay.
Yeah, so Bill and the Nereus team are going to come up with the voting process, and there's going to be, the names will be advertised, and then there will be ballots, and I believe that you will be able to go and vote, and then they're going to make a mark on your badge to say, yes, you've already voted, no fraudulent voting. We don't want fraudulent voting.
So ballots will be available after the nomination process. You can pick up a ballot, and then you are each required to turn in your own ballot. There's no collection of ballots and turning in a stack. Everybody turns in their own ballot to the registration desk, and at some point next week, we will have a tally and an announcement.
Right. And just to say, the board went round and round about how to do this, and there was some concern, so I'm just going to bring it out here, that there are some organizations at the conference who have an overwhelming number of people here. And what my argument was, which was a hard battle, but we won, or I feel we won, was that there may be a lot of people here from a few different companies, but those people have their own opinions. And if they are allowed to vote in a secret ballot, they're not going to do what their manager tells them to do. They're going to do what they believe is the right thing to do for the community and themselves going forward. I participate in the Linux RDMA mailing list by just watching. I subscribe to the GitHub pulls and requests and applications. So I get a sense that the community is egalitarian and respectful. So I do not believe, there was concern that it would look like we might get some shill on the board because we got so many people from organization XYZ. And my argument was they're going to vote the way they think is the right thing to do. And so as an egalitarian community, I trust that people are going to vote given their own conscience, not because they happen to have a LANL-shaped head or something. So, Bill, you were next.
Yeah, this is Bill Boas. I wrote a substantial part of the bylaws along with the lawyers many years ago. And I just wanted to clarify something that the newcomers may not understand. The implication of there being a board of the OpenFabrics Alliance is that the members of the board have something to do with the development of the software. And that is not true. It never was true. It was deliberately not set up that way at the beginning. The recognition that software developers would do what software developers wanted to do. And this workshop was set up as a means of getting everybody together so that the software developers could talk to each other and decide what they wanted to do going forward. In a more formally organized place, you would expect this workshop to be laying out roadmaps and things that the board was expecting software developers to do. That is not the case at all. It never has been. I don't believe it. I mean, I haven't been involved over the last year, but I don't believe that it has ever been the case, and I don't think it should be. Right? The other thing that I would suggest is that for the town hall meeting, for those people who think that the OpenFabrics Alliance has done its job, and I think nobody can dispute it has. If you're familiar with the bylaws, it's done everything that's in the bylaws it was set up to do. And it's the software development community, particularly the Linux kernel community, is doing very well with it. But I think it would be helpful for the town hall meeting for those who think that they want the OpenFabrics Alliance to gracefully depart this earth, right? They should suggest an alternative, right?
Yeah.
Because there are alternatives. Those of us in the community are very aware that there are obvious alternatives that could take over some of the functions.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Because I think that we shouldn't be afraid of that option. So it should be discussed.
Yeah.
Yep.
And from a point of view of history, for the first several years of the Alliance, the focus was on the Alliance board members, and what we did was focus was on marketing and promoting the technology, not on the software development. And it's arguable that it doesn't need that effort of promotion anymore.
Okay,
right?
Thank you. Doug?
I just wanted to point out that since people that are currently in a company that's already a promoter member are excluded from eligibility for being a at-large member, we would, so for those of us who don't know all of the member companies,
Yes.
we would need a list of the companies so we don't bother nominating somebody who's not even eligible.
Right. Okay, good point. I know that we're trying to get some break slides together that will be cycled through on a break. So maybe, or you can go to the website. If you go to openfabrics.org and click on organization and then membership or membership levels, member companies, the list is there. So that will help as well, but we can maybe put it on a slide.
We'll make it easy for everyone.
Yeah. Okay. And you had a question, but you got tired of standing. Did you want to make a comment or have a question?
So I was going to ask about the current state of the OFED code, being that it's tainted and there's a list of files. It wasn't, I guess I didn't capture from the answer that there was an intent to contain the current amount of contamination. Or are we going to the position, because Bill's answer kind of made me sit down, like if OFED doesn't exist, then there's really no point. It's pretty much all biased towards Linux, which kind of locks other platforms out. So
Right.
from that point of view.
Well, and it's a good question. As I said, we talked about trying to, clean room some of the GPL patches so that we could go back to or continue the dual license nature. It's up for discussion, and that can be part of the town hall discussion as well. But as the people involved in the discussion, so there's a group of people it's not just the board, it's like a bigger group, interested parties. We kind of thought it was a non-starter to try and go back to the world of dual license, because what that does is it excludes the larger community who want to contribute, but they want to contribute GPL because they believe in GPL. And that's a big part of the community. So we would either have to stop taking patches from them, which means all of the good ideas that they have, we would just have to say, sorry, unless you dual license it, we can't take them. We just didn't know if that was the right decision going forward.
But I mean, in a ways, doesn't it partition the community? Because then if you're not contributing GPL code, you kind of can't play the game either.
Right. It's a hard question because I think that the community already has some schisms, and that's just yet another one. So this all goes into the bigger conversation of what is the OFA going forward? What is our mission? Do we matter? Do we just go away and people kind of schism on their own? Personally, I don't know that that's a good idea, but those are all very difficult issues, and I don't have an answer for you.
Sure.
Sorry. And Bill, I think the time's up. I know you want to say something, but you're a very long-winded fellow. So I'm going to sit down.
I just wanted to note that the board did change the licensing to BSD only for Microsoft.